my testimony isn't for me. My testimony is for people to know the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. All right, we're finally getting started. Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everybody? I hope you guys are doing great this Wednesday. My name is Jazz, and this is the You Lucky I'm Saved podcast, where instead of fighting with fists, we're fighting with faith. I hope you guys are blessed today, and I pray that God will use this podcast to really speak to you by speaking through me. I pray that we can just understand more about how we can go about this life, go through this walk with Him to teach us how to do things the way that He would want us to do instead of what we're used to doing. But yeah, I know that this is like the intro episode, so I kind of want to introduce it a little bit so you guys can get to know what you're getting yourselves into. Well, let me tell you the story of how this all happened because I feel like this is a huge foundation as to why God called me to do this. So I really didn't want to do this. Disclaimer, I really didn't want to do this. I kept saying no, I kept putting it off. But God was like, you need to do this. And there have been so many bits and pieces of confirmation from the time He told me to start it until now. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. Like, I know that I need to do this. It's not about me. It's definitely not about me. It's all about what God is trying to communicate to the rest of His people. And I think it's super important that I honor that. Like I said, I really didn't want to do this. I have a fear of public speaking. All my life, I've dealt with anxiety. And with the anxiety, public speaking and doing anything public scares me to death. And even from when I was little, I used to sing. I mean, I still sing, but I used to sing all the time, like professionally, to the point where, like, at 7 years old, like, God gave me the gift from when I was like young. But at 7 years old, I was the youngest choir member of an adult choir. And I traveled with them and sang with them and did all the things. And it was a gospel choir. Even though I used to be so scared and have anxiety attacks, panic attacks, my mom felt like that was what God was calling me to do. So I went ahead and did it. And plus, I loved singing. So I did that. And then as time progressed, even in school, you remember in school when you had to take like speech classes, like you would have to prepare a speech and stand in front of the class and talk to everybody about the topic that you want to share. That used to always frighten me too. The anxiety used to just like build up in me and scare me to death to the point where it used to make me sick. Fast forward with different jobs that I've had where I had to present anything, where I had to speak as a moderator or as a host of something, I would always throw up beforehand, but nobody could tell because I was just so used to dealing with the anxiety that I was like, okay, let me throw up, and then it's like, woo, okay, show, let's get the show on the road. But recently, I had a job, and I didn't want to do it initially, but God told me to help this person with building their business, so I said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And part of that was public speaking, and I did it to the point where even though I was insecure about it and had anxiety around it, I was the public speaker who was mostly requested to host different events. The company hosted events with Fortune 500 companies and students, and the students and the people from the Fortune 500 companies requested me all the time. I became the lead public speaker of this company, and I also became the creative director because I created the events, I created the workshops, I created everything when it came to what we were talking about, all the topics. So just seeing how that has happened, even though I dealt with anxiety through it all, it really um, just shows how God was just with me through the entire time. And he was using my gifts. It wasn't me. But after a while, the anxiety got so bad, I fell into a depression. I've always had depression before, and it just sunk me even lower to the point where like I heard God clear as day telling me that it was time to go. So I went ahead and left that job in August 2022. And then God said to me, "You need to start a podcast." But it didn't happen right away. So he told me to leave my job August 2022. From then until June 2023, I was like still applying for jobs. I would make it to like the second interview, won't make it through. And I was just struggling. I was like, Lord, like I need, like, what do I need to do? Because you told me to leave this job. So what can I do? So in June 2023, God told me to start this podcast. And when he told me that, I was like, mm-mm. I, I thought that my calling wasn't public speaking. You called me out of that job because I thought that that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. But God was just like, you need to do this. Like, you got to do this. And I kept saying no. I kept putting it off. I kept coming up with excuses. And then God has like just like given me so many confirmations. I'm the type of girl who needs somebody to tell me a few times that it's important that I need to do something, or that this is like God ordained. It's sad, but like I don't know, I need affirmation. Okay? That's just something about me. I need affirmation on certain things. And God gave me multiple confirmations and affirmation. So that's why we are here. Even up until last night, like I'm a part of this virtual Bible study. And even at the Bible study, like I feel like they were talking about me. Like God talked to them about me, and they were having their private meetings about me. That's literally how I felt because the message was so spot on, even at church on Sunday, like all the way up to this point. The message has, throughout this entire time, has been just go. If God calls you to do something, you have to be obedient. Just go. Right now, I'm on the journey of reading my Bible from the beginning. I'm going to share my testimony on that too because it's something that is really important to this podcast. But some of you may know, some of you may not know of the story of Moses. Moses was a person known to be a murderer, known for being a criminal. Let me just say that. God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And he just kept saying, "But God, I'm not good at public speaking. Like, how am I supposed to do this? How do you expect me to do that?" And he told God no 4 times. 4 times he said no to God until he gave God his yes. And he was able to get the people out of Egypt and lead them to the promised land that God had promised for them. But I wanted to read a verse in Exodus about him actually telling God about his fear of public speaking. It's Exodus chapter 4, verses 10 through 12. It says, Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." I read that part around the time that God told me to begin the podcast. And when I read that, I was like, I mean, I knew the story of Moses, but I didn't know those details of how he was afraid of speaking, how he felt like he wasn't eloquent in speech. Like, if you guys haven't realized during this episode, I have tongue twisters all the time. Like, sometimes I'll read a word and say a word weird, but in my head, I'm like, wait a minute. I know that's the word, but why is it coming out like this? um, and I really resonated with Moses when it came to that. But when I read that part of the Bible, I was just like, the people in the Bible are very relatable. And if you ever have any issues with anything or feel insecure about anything, like people the people God called to do something that made a huge change in history and brought so many people to God and to know who Jesus was were people just like you and me, flawed. They were so flawed. They were flawed. They were seen as like beneath everyone in society, but God called those people. Just keep that in mind. I just had to say that because that is super important. Like I said, I was very afraid to do it because I have always been a shy girl, scared of public speaking. But not only was I afraid of public speaking, but I was also afraid of the unknown. With me being afraid of the unknown, I I've always had experiences with the unknown, so I wasn't really super fearful of that because I completely trusted God with that because there have been so many moments in my life where I God will well at the time I didn't know it was God, but God called me to go and move into an apartment and I didn't have a job at the time. I just graduated from undergrad and I was just like, okay, so I'm going to move. By the grace of God, I was able to make it, I want to say like 6 months without a job, paying rent, paying my half of the rent. And then God provided me with a job to be able to take on with that. And then even after that, when I got laid off from that job, and my roommate and I kind of cut ties, which is a long story. We'll probably get into that later on. But because of that, like I was again without a job, without a roommate to cover her half of the rent. I was getting my master's. I was in graduate school. So that was like super stressful. I was working full time and doing school full time and then got laid off and then still did school full time. But I was just like, what am I going to do? But then I was able to go from that apartment. Once my lease was up, I went to my own apartment, my own 1 bedroom, and I was able to pay that until my lease was up until when COVID started. And I didn't have a job. Like God had me. And I was just focused on school. I wasn't worried about where the money was coming from. Um, but I had it. Like I don't even know how I had it. Like that's how I know that's God. But I've always had wilderness seasons. I've always had experiences where I didn't know what was going to happen next. So the fear of the unknown isn't really a huge fear because God has shown me multiple times what He can do for me. Even when it looks like there isn't a way, He will make a way. Another thing that kind of swayed me from wanting to do this too is the fear of vulnerability. I am an eldest daughter. I'm the oldest of a single parent household, mind you. And I have always just kept to myself. Anything that has ever happened to me in life, any moves that I make, anything that has to do with me, I don't share a lot of my life with anybody. The only person that really knows everything, like everything about me, other than God, is my boyfriend. Other than that, like my family calls me secretive all the time. But I have a fear of vulnerability because I don't want people to know too much. I don't know what that comes from. Maybe it's because I'm the eldest daughter of a single parent household, but I never wanted people to know too much or use anything against me or try to weaponize it. You know what I'm saying? So that was my biggest fear, vulnerability. God is still working on me with that because I still feel a certain way about being vulnerable, but hopefully through this podcast I could be more vulnerable with y'all because God has communicated to me that it is important for me to be vulnerable because my testimony isn't for me. My testimony is for people to know the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. That is super important to me. I love talking about God. Like, if you ask anybody in my close circle, like, I will talk about God all day, every day. And it's important to show how good God has been to me in my life so that people can want to get to know him more for themselves, and for people who don't know him at all to hear my story and see how God has changed everything, turned everything upside down for me in the best possible way, and think, I want to know about this Jesus. Like, I want to know how she was able to get through all of those things. The fear of vulnerability isn't going to keep me from sharing who I am with y'all, from sharing what I've been through with y'all, because I already had this talk with God. I told God, I said, I don't want to share anything that you want me to speak about that I can't share my experience about. I already made like this pact with God. I was like, look, this is your podcast. I'm just the co host. Like, please use me as a vessel and just speak through me because I can't do this by myself. So this is definitely a huge, huge, huge collab with the one and only God, Jesus Christ. And I'm so grateful that he chose me to do this, even though I fought so hard not to. But outside of that, I also realized that all the fears that I had, none of it matters. None of that matters. Like I said, if you are called to do something by God, your obedience is super important. It's probably not even for you. Okay, if it's for you, then you will have like God will bless you on the other side of your yes, but ultimately it's for other people. You may be an answered prayer to people, for people. You may be a miracle for people. You may be a huge part of someone's salvation just by planting a seed and allowing for God to do the rest. Like, any fear that you have, any insecurity that you have on what God's called you to do, none of that matters. Just go. Like, even if you don't have everything right here and now, like, just go and God will provide the rest. I also wanted to read a passage. It's James chapter 4, verse 17. Again, I'm reading from the NIV version. It says, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is a sin. Like I told y'all, like, I love God down, okay? Like, I talk about him all the time. Like, he is everything to me, and I do not want to disappoint him in any way. And like it's like the pastor said, like, if you know what you're supposed to do after God told you what to do and you don't do it, you're sinning. Because at that point, you're telling God that you know better than he does, or you know more than he does, more about you than he does, when he literally created you. He knows your flaws. He knows your shortcomings. He knows your strengths and your weaknesses. And because of that, and because of who you are as a whole, he wants to use that for a specific reason. He called you for a specific reason. So, anyway, let me tell you what this podcast is all about. It's supposed to serve as a safe space to have an open conversation with God about having a better understanding that everything is intentional. Seriously, everything is intentional. Everything that God does is intentional. Every situation is a healing and learning experience. And I believe that it is important people understand that once you are saved, it's not like you have this thing that automatically just happens. Like, you give your life to Jesus Christ, and then all of a sudden it's like everything that you used to do goes away. Like, you are now just going to be this completely straight and narrow human being. It's a walk. It's a walk, a narrow walk. Life be lifing. Like, people will try you. I know personally for me, before I gave my life to Christ, like, I used to be so angry. All right. Anybody popped off at the mouth, I used to pop off right back. Okay. Anybody wanted to try to get these hands, like, you can get these hands. Sometimes we want to get our lick back, but the Lord says that vengeance is his. So just let him have it. One of my favorite verses since really being intentional with my relationship with God is 2 Corinthians 5:17, which says, anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. Like I said, God is working on this vulnerability thing with me. So please just ride with me. Okay. I'm going to share with you my experiences of depression, of anxiety, of questioning God, of what else? Just sharing my journey of getting to know him for myself, because a lot of people would tell me what God said to them about me, or tell me who God was, and I was just like, I don't need that from you. Like, I want God to talk to me. I want to get to know God for myself. Like, I want to have that one-on-one time with God where he speaks to me and through me. Like, yes, it's good to have guidance, but if you don't have a relationship with God at all and people are telling you what God has told them, you can't have a relationship with God through anybody else's lens. That's it. That's all. And I also want to share the messages that he's downloaded with me, downloaded to me, because God really has downloaded a lot of things since I've started my personal relationship with him in June. The messages that I have learned and have shared with other believers in the faith who have been in the faith and have had a relationship with God longer than myself, they are always like, how did you come up with that? I never thought of it like that. So um I used to think that I was an overthinker, but God showed me that I'm actually just a thinker, and he gave me that gift. And I think that that is very valuable here in the space too, to just be a thinker and be an open-minded thinker too of the things of God and actually hear him through his word. I'm also going to bring some friends and family here for the ride, okay? Because they're going to share their own experiences, their own testimonies, and people that you can relate to, everyday people. Oh my gosh, I think the recording actually stopped on the camera. Okay, that's fine. That is 100% fine. We're going to keep going. But look, I'm healing and you're healing. But the beauty about this journey is that we don't need to go through it alone. All right. This is a love letter to God, and it's about to get real vulnerable up in here. But we'll be prepared to face things head on. So tune in every Wednesday. You heard that correctly. Every Wednesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube to be a part of the Saved Souls family. Because whether you're saved or not, after every episode, you'll be able to look at any obstacle in the face and say, you lucky I'm saved. Or make the decision to get to know who God is for yourself and give your life to Jesus. Because, like I said in the beginning, instead of fighting with fists, we fighting with faith. Because the devil don't want these hands. So I hope that you guys like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that you will join the family, because it is super important for us to have these tools. We want to live for Christ. And every day, our main purpose in life is to draw near to him and to know him for ourselves. But the second purpose in life is for us to share who he is, to bring people closer to him, to make heaven crowded. Okay. That is my mission. Like, when God told me to do this, even before God told me to do this, like when I started reading his word from the beginning and really getting to know him and just writing down everything that he has shared with me, I'm like, everybody needs to know this. I need to make sure that heaven is crowded with God giving me the story that I have to share as my testimony, to touch other people's lives so that they can get to know him. That is my main goal in life. Like, before, when I was working, like I said, like I didn't know what my purpose was. I was just in the space, and I am very multi-talented by the grace of God. And I know that he gave me those gifts for this specific reason, to reach lost souls and even save souls who may have lost their way, or save souls who don't necessarily have their own personal relationship with God that's intentional. So, yeah, that's about it. I will catch you guys next week. Again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share with friends, share with family members, share with people who you know would need a podcast that will help them just learn how to fight with faith. So, yeah, I love you all. Stay blessed. Keep that light in your hearts, y'all. And if you don't have that light, get that light. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.